The thunder cracked like rifle shots across the Montana territory as Jack Brennan pulled his weathered hat lower against the driving rain. Lightning illuminated his weathered ranch house, a solitary beacon in the vast emptiness of the high plains. For 3 years, he'd worked this land alone, his only companions, the 100 head of cattle that grazed his modest spread, and the ghosts of better men he'd left buried in his past. The storm had been building since midday, transforming the usually clear autumn sky into a churning mass of black clouds. Now, as darkness fell, the wind howled like a banshee through the cottonwoods lining Willow Creek. Jack had seen storms before, had ridden through worse in his cavalry days, but this one carried a different kind of fury. Before we begin, I'd like to ask you to tell us your name and the city you're watching from. We love getting to know our audience. Also, please don't forget to give this video a like, share it with others, and subscribe to our channel. That way, we can keep bringing you more stories like this one. He was securing the barn door when he heard it, a sound that didn't belong to the storm. A low moan, barely audible above the wind, coming from somewhere near the old corral. Hand instinctively moved to the Colt .45 at his hip. In this territory, sounds in the night usually meant trouble. And trouble had a way of finding Jack Brennan even when he tried his hardest to avoid it. Lightning flashed again. And in that brief moment of stark illumination, he saw her, a figure crumpled against the fence posts. Dark hair plastered to her skull by the rain, one hand pressed against her swollen belly. Even from 30 yards away, Jack could see the blood on her doeskin dress. Christ almighty, he muttered, breaking into a run. She was Apache, he could tell from her features and the intricate beadwork on her dress, now muddy and torn. Young, maybe 19 or 20, and far along in her pregnancy. A gash across her forehead had painted half her face crimson, and her breathing came in shallow gasps. Her dark eyes found his as he knelt beside her, and he saw no fear there. Only a fierce determination that reminded him of wounded hawks he'd found as a boy. "Can you hear me?" Jack asked, his voice gentle, despite the storm raging around them. She nodded weakly, her lips moving in what he thought might be Apache words he couldn't understand. Jack had learned enough Apache during his cavalry years to know the word for water, too, and he heard her whisper it between labored breaths. Without hesitation, he scooped her into his arms, surprised by how light she felt despite her condition. She couldn't have weighed more than 100 pounds soaking wet. The barn offered shelter from the wind and driving rain. Jack laid her carefully on a bed of fresh hay near the back stall, where his mare whinnied nervously at the unfamiliar presence. The pregnant woman's eyes remained open, watching him with an alertness that told him she was stronger than she looked. "You're safe here," Jack said, though he wondered if she understood English. He brought her water from the pump, holding the cup steady as she drank with grateful gulps. "What happened to you?" "Where did you come from?" She spoke then, her voice barely above a whisper, in a mixture of Apache and broken English. "Soldiers. Burned village ... ran." Her hand moved protectively over her belly. "Baby ... coming soon." Jack felt his stomach tighten. He'd heard rumors of military actions against Apache settlements to the south, operations designed to force the remaining free tribes onto reservations. If this woman had fled from one of those raids, she'd traveled nearly 50 miles through hostile territory while pregnant and wounded. The thought of what she'd endured made his jaw clench. "How long since you ate?" he asked, noticing the hollow look in her cheeks. When she held up 3 fingers, he shook his head grimly. 3 days without food, pregnant and injured, traveling. Through wilderness that would challenge experienced scouts? Jack retrieved a wool blanket from his tack room and wrapped it around her shoulders. Then he headed to the house for supplies: salt pork, hardtack, and a bottle of whiskey for cleaning wounds. When he returned, she had managed to sit up against a support beam, her hands still cradling her belly. "I'm Jack," he said, pointing to himself. "Jack Brennan." "Ayana," she replied, the Apache word rolling musically off her tongue despite her exhaustion means ... eternal blossom. As Jack cleaned the gash on her forehead with whiskey and strips of clean cloth, he found himself studying her face. Cheekbones, intelligent dark eyes, and a stubborn set to her jaw that spoke of inner strength. This was a woman who had survived things that would have broken lesser souls. Ayanna, he repeated, testing the pronunciation. Pretty name for a pretty lady. She almost smiled at that, a brief softening of her features that transformed her face entirely. You, ... Good man, she said in careful English. Many white men would not help Apache woman.
Atch!
Jack paused in his ministrations, meeting her gaze directly. I reckon there's good and bad in all colors of people. You needed help and I got help. To give. Simple as that. The storm continued to rage outside, rattling the barn doors and sending sheets of rain against the weathered walls. Jack fashioned a more comfortable bed for Ayanna, using horse blankets and clean straw, then settled down nearby to keep watch. Sleep wouldn't come easy tonight anyway, rarely did when the weather turned violent like this. As the hours passed, they spoke in halting conversations. Ayanna told him about her village, how the soldiers had come at dawn without warning, burning lodges and scattering families to the winds. Her husband had been killed trying to protect the children, and she had fled into the wilderness with nothing. But the clothes on her back, why you help me? She asked, as the storm began to show signs of weakening. Apache and white men, is bad blood between? Jack was quiet for a long moment, listening to the rain drum against the roof. I suppose because I know what it's like to be alone and afraid, he said finally. And because every person deserves a chance to see another sunrise. You have woman? Children? No, Jack replied, his voice carrying the weight of old regrets. No family left to speak of. Ayanna studied his face in the lamplight, seeing something there that made her nod with understanding. You have sadness in eyes, like me. As dawn approached and the storm finally began to exhaust itself, Jack dozed fitfully in his chair. He woke to find Ayanna watching the barn doors with an expression of growing concern. The rain had stopped, and pale morning light was beginning to filter through the gaps in the wood. What is it? Jack asked, instantly alert. Listen, she whispered. Jack strained his ears and heard it. The sound of horses approaching. Many horses moving at a steady pace across the muddy ground. His blood ran cold as he recognized the rhythm, not the chaotic hoofbeats of wild mustangs or the measured gait of cavalry patrols. This was something else entirely, the disciplined advance of organized riders who moved with purpose. He moved to the barn door and peered through a crack in the wood. What he saw made his heart hammer against his ribs. Riders were emerging from the tree line along Willow Creek, their paint-decorated faces and traditional weapons clearly visible in the growing light. Apache warriors, but not just from one band. The different styles of dress and war paint told him these men came from multiple tribes. Jesus, Jack breathed, stepping back from the door. Ayanna, how many people knew you were headed this way? Face had gone pale. Many searched for me. Husbands, brothers, my father's people, others who escaped soldiers. She struggled to her feet, one hand supporting her belly. They find my trail. They think you take me, hurt me. Jack's mind raced. As he counted the riders visible through the door crack, at least 20 so far, and more still emerging from the woods. This wasn't a rescue party, this was a war party, and they had his ranch surrounded. The sound of horses had stopped. An eerie silence settled over the ranch, broken only by the distant lowing of his cattle and the drip of water from the barns. Jack knew that silence well. It was the quiet that came before violence, the held breath before the storm broke in earnest. And this time, he wasn't sure any amount of shelter would be enough to weather what was coming. The silence stretched, like a taut rope ready to snap. Jack pressed his eye to the crack in the barn door again, counting riders as they positioned themselves around his property. 23 visible, probably more hidden in the timber. Each warrior bore the markings of different bands, some with the traditional red and black face paint of the Chiricahua, others with the distinctive blue war stripes of the Mescalero. There were even what looked like Jicarilla Apache mixed in with the group. 5 tribes, Ayanna whispered, confirming his worst fears. This ... this very bad. Some enemies to each other, but they unite to find me. Jack felt sweat beating on his forehead despite the cool morning air. In his cavalry days, he'd faced Apache war parties before, but never like this. These weren't raiders looking for easy targets. This was a gathering of clans united by a single purpose, and that purpose was currently hiding in his barn. Why would enemy tribes work together? Jack asked, keeping his voice low. Ayana's hand moved to her belly, and her eyes filled with something that might have been tears. My baby, ... father was Chief's son. Tanakh was trying to unite all Apache. People when soldiers killed him. Different bands. They respect his blood. She took a shaky breath. Child in my womb. Last of important bloodline. They will die to protect it. The implications hit Jack like a physical blow. The child Ayana carried wasn't just any Apache baby. It was potential royalty. It's the heir to a lineage that commanded respect across tribal boundaries. No wonder they'd mobilized multiple bands to find her. A voice called out from the yard, speaking. In Apache. The tone was formal, ceremonial almost, but Jack could hear the underlying steel in it. Ayana listened intently, her face growing more troubled with each word. They want to speak with you, she translated, the one talking. He is Nolnish, my brother-in-law. War leader of my husband's people. She met Jack's eyes. He thinks you capture me. Maybe hurt me for revenge against Apache raids. Jack checked his revolver, knowing it would do little good against 23 seasoned warriors. What do I tell them? Truth, Ayana said simply. But they may not believe white man's truth. Jack squared his shoulders and moved toward the barn. Door, stay hidden until I figure out what we're dealing with. No. Ayana struggled to her feet. If I hide, they think you forced me to hide. I must show them I choose to be here. Before Jack could protest, she was walking toward the door. Her movements were careful but determined, and despite her condition and injuries, she carried herself with a dignity that spoke of noble blood. Jack had no choice but to follow. They stepped out into the morning sunlight together. The warriors had formed a loose semicircle around the barn and house, leaving clear sightlines but blocking any escape routes. Jack noted professionally that they'd positioned themselves with tactical precision. Whoever led this group knew military strategy. The warrior who'd called out urged his spotted pony forward. He was younger than Jack had expected, maybe 25, with intelligent dark eyes and scars that spoke of many battles. Eagle feathers hung from his black hair, and a Winchester rifle rested across his lap with casual familiarity. I am Nolnish, the warrior said, in accented but clear English. Brother to Tanakh, who was murdered by bluecoat soldiers. His eyes moved to Ayana, and Jack saw relief there, quickly masked by suspicion, as his gaze shifted back to Jack. Are the man who holds my brother's widow. I'm the man who gave her shelter from the storm, Jack replied evenly. She came to my land wounded and hungry. I helped her because it was the right thing to do. Another rider moved forward from the group, an older man with silver-streaked hair, and the bearing of someone accustomed to command. His war paint was more elaborate, and the other warriors deferred to him with subtle nods. I am Cochise's nephew. Nach of the Chiricahua, the older warrior announced. Why should we believe white man's words? For 30 years, white men speak lies to Apache people. Ayana stepped forward before Jack could respond. Shh. When she spoke in Apache, her voice carried a strength that belied her physical condition. The assembled warriors listened intently, and Jack watched their expressions shift as she continued her explanation. She tells them what happened, a new voice said in English. Jack turned to see a third rider approaching, this one younger still. Barely out of his teens, but carrying himself with the confidence of seasoned leadership. She says you saved her life in storm, says you treated her with honor, and you are, Jack asked. Victorio's son Mangus, the young man replied. Mescalero Apache. Hey. We track Ayana for 4 days after soldiers burn her village, eyes narrowed. As he studied Jack, find her horse tracks, her blood on rocks. Then her trail disappears near your land in storm. Jack was beginning to understand the complexity of the situation. This wasn't just about one pregnant woman. Ayana's child represented hope for unity among traditionally separate Apache bands. Her late husband had apparently been working to forge alliances between the tribes, and their unborn child symbolized that dream. She needed help, Jack said simply. I gave it. That's all there is to it. Nolnish urged his horse closer, his rifle now held more pointedly. Maybe, but now she is here, and question becomes, what happens next? He gestured toward the assembled warriors. These men represent 5 different bands. Some travel many days to be here. I'll want to protect Tanok's child and honor his widow. So take her, Jack said, though the words felt like swallowing ground glass. I never meant to keep her. Not so simple, Mangus said, shaking his head. Soldiers still hunt Apache people. They know about baby, no bloodline. They want child. Dead or taken to reservation. He pointed toward the horizon. Cavalry patrol may be 1 day behind us. We see their smoke yesterday. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. Jack glanced at Ayanna, who was listening to the rapid exchange of Apache. Between several of the warriors, her face had gone pale again, and her hand gripped the barn door frame for support. What are they saying? Jack asked her. They argue about safety, she translated. Some want to take me north to Canada. Others say south to Mexico. Some want to fight soldiers here. Use your ranch as fortress. She looked at him with eyes that held depths of sadness. I'll agree on one thing. You in danger now. A help Apache woman makes you an enemy to white soldiers. Jack absorbed this information with growing dread, known there would be consequences. 2, helping Ayanna. But he hadn't fully grasped how quickly his simple act of mercy would spiral into a conflict that could consume his entire life. Nate. The older Chiricahua leader spoke again in Apache. This time, his tone was more urgent, and Jack saw several of the younger warriors nodding in agreement. Whatever he was proposing, it was gaining support. He says soldiers will come here looking for Ayanna, Mangus translated, apparently appointed. As the group's English speaker, when they find she was here, they'd burn your ranch, maybe kill you for helping Apache. He says only way to protect everyone is to make pact. What kind of pact? Jack asked, though he suspected he wouldn't like the answer. You come with us, Nolnish said, switching back to English. Help us protect Ayanna and baby until child is born. We know good places to hide, but need someone who understands white man's ways, someone who can speak to soldiers if they find us. Jack stared at the assembled warriors, realizing they were offering him a choice that wasn't really a choice at all. Stay behind and face the cavalry patrol alone, probably to be accused of harboring fugitive Apache. Or abandon everything he'd built and join an uncertain flight across hostile territory. And if I refuse? He asked. Then you probably die when? Soldiers come, Mangus said matter-of-factly. And we take Ayanna anyway, because we cannot leave her here. Ayanna moved closer to Jack, her breathing becoming more labored. Choose quickly, she whispered. Baby, ... baby, coming soon, maybe today. As if summoned by her words, a distant sound reached them across the plains, the rhythmic drumming of many horses moving at cavalry pace. The patrol Mangus had mentioned was closer than expected, and from the sound of it, they were riding hard. Every Apache warrior in the yard tensed, hands moving to weapons. The peaceful morning had become a powder keg with a lit fuse, and Jack Brennan found himself standing at the center of it all, holding the life of a woman and her unborn child in his hands. The sound of approaching cavalry grew louder. Whatever. The decision he made, he had to make it now. The drumming of hoofbeats grew steadily louder. Jack estimated the cavalry patrol would crest the ridge overlooking his ranch within minutes. Around him, 23 Apache warriors shifted restlessly, their horses sensing the tension. Some were already knocking arrows to bowstrings, while others checked the loads in captured military rifles. How many soldiers? Jock asked Mangus, who was scanning the eastern horizon with experienced eyes. Maybe 20, 25, the young mescalero replied. Full patrol with pack mules? They're not just passing through, they hunting. Ayanna gripped Jack's arm, her face contorting with pain. Baby? She gasped. Jack, ... baby, coming now? The timing couldn't have been worse. Jack looked from the approaching dust cloud to the woman beside him, then to the gathered warriors who were waiting for his decision. In all his years of soldiering, he'd never faced a tactical situation this complex. "Nolnish," Jack called to the war leader. "If we're going to do this, we need to move fast, but she can't travel. Not now." The Apache leader's face was grim as he assessed the situation. "Then we fight here," he said simply. "Make stand at your buildings. Use them like fortress against a full cavalry patrol." Jack shook his head. "These buildings won't stop rifle fire and you'll be trapped. They'll just surround us and wait for reinforcements." "You have better idea, white man?" asked, his tone challenging. Jack's mind raced through the possibilities. His ranch sat in a shallow valley with Willow Creek running along one side and open grassland stretching to the horizon. There was limited cover, and the creek wasn't deep enough to provide concealment for more than a few men. In a straight fight, the Apache had the advantage of numbers, but the soldiers had discipline, modern weapons, and the eventual promise of reinforcements. "Maybe," Jack said slowly, "but it depends on whether you trust me." "Speak," Nolnish commanded. "Patrol will expect to find either an empty ranch or a homesteader who's seen nothing," Jack explained. "What they won't expect is cooperation." He gestured toward the assembled warriors. "Most of you need to disappear into the timber along the creek. Keep your best shooters hidden where they can cover the buildings. Leave maybe 5 men with me enough to look like you're holding me prisoner." Mangus frowned. "You want us to split our force? That is foolish." "No, it's smart," Jack countered. "When the soldiers arrive, they'll see what looks like a small Apache band that's taken a hostage. I can negotiate with them, keep them talking while Ayana—" He looked at the pregnant woman who was leaning heavily against the barn door. "She has her baby safely inside," and then Nate asked. "Then we play it as it comes. Maybe I can convince them you've already moved on, that you're just using my place as a temporary camp. Buy us time until the child is born and she can travel." Ayana spoke up from where she was braced against the barn. "It could work. Soldiers think Jack is prisoner, not helper. They try to negotiate for his release, or they attack immediately." Nolnish pointed out. "They won't," Jack said, with more confidence than he felt. "Not with a white hostage in play. Army protocol requires them to try negotiation first. It'll give us time." The sound of approaching horses was getting closer. Nate looked to the other leaders, and Jack watched a rapid, silent conversation pass between them in glances and subtle gestures. These men had been fighting together for years, and they communicated with the efficiency of a well-trained unit. "Try your plan," Nolnish decided. "But if soldiers attack, we kill them all." "Understood?" "Understood," Jack agreed grimly. The transformation was remarkable. Within moments, most of the Apache warriors had melted away into the cottonwoods along Willow Creek, disappearing so completely that Jack began to doubt they'd ever been there. Only 5 men remained visible: Nolnish, Mangus, and 3 seasoned fighters who positioned themselves strategically around the yard. "Ayana, you need to get inside," Jack said urgently. "Into the house, not the barn. Let them think you're my... ... my woman, not an Apache widow." She nodded, understanding immediately. "What if baby comes during fighting?" "Then we hope there's no fighting," Jack replied, helping her toward the house. "And if there is, we hope it's over quick." Just as Ayana disappeared through his front door, the cavalry patrol topped the ridge. Jack counted 22 soldiers, led by a captain he didn't recognize, though the man's bearing suggested regular army rather than territorial militia. That was both good and bad. Regular army officers were more likely to follow protocol, but they were also more experienced at reading tactical situations. The patrol approached at a measured pace, weapons ready, but not openly threatening. Captain raised his hand to halt his men about 50 yards from the ranch buildings, well outside effective pistol range, but close enough for rifle work. "I'm Captain Morrison, 3rd Cavalry," the officer called out. "Identify yourselves." Nolnish stepped forward, his Winchester held casually but ready. "I am war leader of Free Apache People," he replied in careful English. "We claim right of parley under white man's law." Captain Morrison's eyes moved from the Apache warriors to Jack, taking in his civilian clothes and the way he stood, not quite like a prisoner, but not entirely free either. "Are you all right, sir?" he called to. "Jack, I'm alive," Jack replied, which was technically true if not entirely informative. What's your name? Jack Brennan? This is my ranch. Mr. Brennan, are these men holding you against your will? Jack hesitated. This was the crucial moment his answer would determine whether the next few minutes passed peacefully or erupted into violence. Behind him, he could hear Ayanna moving around inside the house, and he thought he detected the sound of labored breathing. It's complicated, Captain, Jack said finally. We're in the middle of negotiations. What kind of negotiations? Nalish spoke before Jack could answer. Seek safe passage north for our families. This man helps us speak with Soldier Chief. Morrison urged his horse forward a few steps, studying the scene with professional interest. I was told there might be Apache in this area. Refugees from the action at Tres Alamos. You the one who burned village? Mangus asked, his voice hard. I was there, Morrison admitted. Following orders to relocate hostile Apache to designated reservation areas. Children died in that burning, Nalnish said quietly, but his words carried clearly across the open ground. Old people died. You follow orders that kill innocents. Jack could see the conversation heading toward dangerous territory. Captain, these men aren't hostiles, he interjected. They're survivors looking for sanctuary. Maybe we can work something out that doesn't require more killing. The Army's position is clear, Mr. Brennan. All Apache must relocate to designated reservations. No exceptions. Even women and children, Jack asked. Especially women and children. It's where they'll be safe. From inside the house came a sharp cry of pain, quickly muffled. Morrison's attention snapped toward the sound, and Jack saw suspicion growing in the officer's eyes. Who's in your house, Mr. Brennan? My wife. Jack lied smoothly. She's not well. I'd like to see her. Make sure she's all right. She's fine, Nolnish interrupted. Woman sick, but fine. You not need to see. Morrison's hand moved toward his sidearm. I think I'll be the judge of that. The tension ratcheted up another notch. Jack could sense the hidden Apache warriors in the timber shifting position, probably drawing beads on the soldiers. One wrong word, one sudden movement, and this parley would explode into a bloodbath. Captain, Jack said carefully, why don't you and I discuss this privately, man to man? I don't think that would be wise under the circumstances. Another cry came from the house, longer this time, and unmistakably the sound of a woman in labor. Morrison's expression hardened as understanding dawned. Mr. Brennan, step away from those Indians. Now. Can't do that, Captain. It's an order. Citizen, I'm not a soldier anymore, Captain. Haven't been for 3 years. Morrison studied Jack more carefully, noting the way he carried himself. The automatic military bearing that never quite disappeared. You served? 3rd Colorado Volunteers. Mustered out after Sand Creek. The reference to that controversial engagement made Morrison pause. Every cavalry officer knew about Sand Creek, and most knew it remained a sensitive subject among veterans. Then you know what happens when civilians interfere with military operations? I know what happens when good men follow bad orders, Jack replied quietly. Inside the house, Ayanna cried out again, and this time the sound carried a note of urgency that made Jack's heart race. The baby was coming, whether they were ready or not. Captain Morrison looked from Jack to the Apache warriors, then toward the house where the sounds of childbirth were becoming impossible to ignore. When he spoke again, his voice was thoughtful. Mr. Brennan, I'm going to ask you one more time. Are you being held against your will? Jack met the officer's eyes directly. No, sir, I'm not. Then you're harboring fugitive Apache, which makes you subject to arrest. Maybe, but right now I'm helping a woman have her baby, and that's something I'll answer to God for before I answer to the Army. Morrison sat his horse in silence for a long moment, weighing his options. Around him, his soldiers waited with the patience of men who'd learned to trust their officer's judgment. In the trees, Apache warriors held their positions ready to turn this peaceful valley into a killing ground. And in the house, a child was fighting to be born into a world that seemed determined to tear itself apart. The standoff stretched like a wire about to snap. Captain Morrison sat his horse 50 yards away, his 22 soldiers arranged in a loose formation that could quickly become a battle line. Hidden in the cottonwoods, Apache riflemen waited for the first shot that would signal the beginning of a massacre. And in Jack's small ranch house, Ayanna fought to bring new life into a world balanced on the edge of violence. Another agonized cry came from inside, followed by what sounded like encouraging words in Apache. Jack realized one of the hidden warriors, probably a woman, had slipped into the house to help with the birth. "Captain Morrison," Jack called out, "whatever you're thinking of doing, you might want to think it through. There are women and children involved here." "I count 5 Apache warriors, Mr. Brennan," Morrison replied. "All of fighting age." "Where are these women and children you're talking about?" It was a fair question, and Jack realized his story was beginning to unravel. Morrison was too experienced, an officer, to miss the inconsistencies in what he was seeing. The Apache warriors were too well positioned, too ready for combat. And the sounds coming from the house were clearly those of childbirth, not illness. "The woman in my house is Apache," Jack admitted. "She came here wounded and pregnant, fleeing from the attack on her village. I gave her shelter." Morrison's expression didn't change, but Jack saw his hand rest more purposefully on his saber hilt. "Then you've confirmed what I suspected. You're harboring a fugitive from justice." "I'm helping a woman in labor," Jack shot back. "Since when is that a crime?" "Since that woman is part of a hostile force that's been raiding settlements across this territory," LONER spoke up sharply. "Woman not part of raids? Woman widow of peace chief, should carry baby of man who tried to stop fighting between Apache and whites. All the more reason she belongs on a reservation where she can be properly supervised." Morrison said from the house came a series of rapid words in Apache, followed by what sounded like instructions. Then Ayanna's voice, strained but determined. "Jack, baby coming now." The urgency in her voice made Jack take an instinctive step toward the house. Morrison immediately drew his pistol. "Stay where you are, Mr. Brennan." "That woman needs help," Jack said through gritted teeth. "She'll get help. Medical attention at Fort Collins once we take her into custody. She can't travel. The baby's being born right now. Then we'll wait until it's over." LONER raised his rifle to his shoulder. "Nobody take Ayanna or baby anywhere. Child sacred to all Apache people. We die before let soldiers have sacred child." Morrison's soldiers responded instantly, rifles coming up in a coordinated movement that spoke of long training and battle experience. The hidden Apache warriors would have clear shots at most of them, but the soldiers' discipline was evident in their steady positioning and calm faces. "Lower your weapons," Morrison ordered his men, surprising everyone. "All of you, sir." His sergeant questioned. "I said lower your weapons, Sergeant Hayes. We're not going to have a shooting war over a woman in childbirth." The soldiers reluctantly complied, though they remained ready to fight at a moment's notice. LONER, after a moment's hesitation, also lowered his rifle slightly. "Mr. Brennan," Morrison continued, "I'm going to make you a proposition. Let my surgeon attend to the woman during the birth. In return, I'll give you my word as an officer that we won't move anyone until the child is born and the mother is able to travel safely." "And then," Jack asked, "then these Apache return to the reservation and you face charges for harboring fugitives?" "Not acceptable," Mongus said flatly. "Ayanna, free woman, baby free child. It's no reservation." Morrison sighed, and for the first time, Jack heard genuine weariness in the officer's voice. "Son, I've been fighting Apache for 7 years. Good men have died on both sides, and I'm tired of burying soldiers and civilians alike. But the law is the law, and my orders are clear." Another voice joined the conversation. An unexpected one. "Captain Morrison." Everyone turned to see an Apache woman emerging from the house. She was older, perhaps 50, with silver-streaked hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to respect. Jack had never seen her before, but from the way the warriors reacted, she was someone of importance. "I am Lozon," she announced in clear English. "Sister to Victorio, medicine woman of the Mescalero people. I help bring many babies into this world, white and Apache both." Morrison's eyes widened slightly. Every cavalry officer in the territory knew that name. Lozon was legendary, a warrior woman who rode with her brother's band and was said to have mystical powers in battle. She was also known for her humanitarian efforts, having saved the lives of numerous white captives over the years. "Ma'am," Morrison said respectfully, touching the brim of his hat. "This woman inside, she carries child of Tannock," Lozon continued. "You know this name?" "I know it," Morrison admitted. "He was the chief who tried to negotiate peace treaties, killed at Tres Alamos. Yes, he tried to make peace between all peoples. His child may be last hope for peace." Lozon gestured toward the house. "Baby coming now, very difficult birth, woman may die, child may die. You want this blood on your hands, soldier chief?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Morrison's face, seeing the internal struggle between duty and conscience playing out in the officer's expression. Behind him, his soldiers waited for orders, while the hidden Apache warriors remained poised for battle. From inside the house came a long, keening cry, followed by urgent Apache words. Lozon immediately started back toward the door, then paused to look over her shoulder at Morrison. "You have children, Captain?" "2 daughters," Morrison replied. Quietly, "Then you understand. Birth is sacred time. It's time when all fighting should stop, when all people remember what truly matters." She met his eyes directly. "I ask you, as mother to father, give us this time. Let baby come into world in peace." Morrison sat his horse in silence for what felt like an eternity. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with the weight of command decisions. "Sergeant Hayes, have the men dismount and water their horses. We'll make camp here until this situation resolves itself." "Sir, our orders are to apprehend fugitive Apache, Sergeant. As long as they remain here, they're not fugitives. They single quotes, negotiating." Jack felt a surge of respect for the cavalry officer. Morrison was bending his orders to the breaking point, risking his career to allow a child to be born in peace. It was the kind of moral courage that transcended uniform and rank. "Thank you, Captain," Jack said sincerely. "Don't thank me yet, Mr. Brennan. We still have to figure out what happens after the baby's born." Nish lowered his rifle completely. "We remember your honor, soldier chief. Apache people have long memories for both kindness and cruelty." As if responding to the momentary peace, another cry came from the house, but this one was different. Higher pitched, more urgent. The unmistakable sound of a newborn's first breath. Lozon smiled, the expression transforming her weathered face. "Baby is born," she announced. "Strong lungs. Good sign." A cheer went up from the hidden Apache warriors, echoing from the timber. Along Willow Creek, even some of Morrison's soldiers smiled at the sound of new life entering the world, Jack found himself grinning, despite the complexity of their situation. Whatever happened next, Ayana's child had been born free, under open sky. With warriors of 5 tribes standing guard, and even enemy soldiers offering protection during the sacred moment of birth, "Boy or girl?" Angus called out in Apache. Lazian answered in the same language, and the warriors cheered again. "What did she say?" Jack asked. "Girl child," Nish translated, his voice filled with pride. "Strong Apache girl, born free like her father wanted." Morrison dismounted and walked his horse closer to the house, stopping at a respectful distance. "How is the mother?" "Tired but well," Lozon replied. "Baby healthy, both will live. I'm glad to hear it." Morrison paused, then looked directly at Jack. "Mr. Brennan, I need to ask you something, and I need an honest answer. Go ahead. If I let these people go, if I report that we found no Apache in this area, can you give me your word that there will be no more raids from this group? No attacks? On settlers or supply trains?" Nish and Mangus exchanged glances before the war leader answered. "We are not raiders, soldier chief. We are people trying to find place to live in peace. But if soldiers keep hunting us, keep trying to cage us on reservation like animals, we fight to stay free." "That's not exactly the answer I was hoping for." "It's his honest answer," Nish replied. "Only answer we can give." Morrison was quiet for a long moment, weighing his options. Finally, he turned to his sergeant. "Sergeant Hayes, what's your assessment of the tactical situation here?" The grizzled non-com looked around the valley, noting the excellent concealment along the creek and the positioning of the visible Apache warriors. "Sir, I'd estimate we're facing significantly more opposition than what's visible. Probably 230 hostiles total, well-positioned and well-armed." Any engagement would result in heavy casualties on both sides. And your recommendation? Sir, given that we've confirmed the fugitives are no longer in this immediate area, having departed before our arrival, I'd recommend we continue our patrol to the north. No point in engaging civilians in unnecessary combat. Jack stared at the sergeant, realizing the man was offering Morrison a way to let everyone walk away with honor intact. It was a masterful piece of military fiction that would satisfy the letter of their orders while avoiding a pointless battle. Very good, Sergeant. Have the men mount up. We'll continue north along Willow Creek. As the soldiers prepared to depart, Morrison approached Jack one final time. Mr. Brennan, I hope you understand that I can't officially know about any of this. Understand, Captain. And I hope you understand why I had to do what I did. I do. And for what it's worth, I think Tanakh would have approved of what happened here today. Morrison mounted his horse and gathered his reins. Take care of yourself, and take care of them. As the cavalry patrol rode north, disappearing over the ridge, an unusual quiet settled over the ranch. The Apache warriors began emerging from their concealment. Moving with the easy grace of men who'd faced death and found themselves still breathing, Jack walked to the house and knocked gently on the door. Iana, how are you doing? Come, her voice called weakly. He entered to find her propped up in his bed, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in soft doeskin. The baby's face was peaceful in sleep, and Jack was struck by how perfect she looked. Promise of a future that might somehow bridge the divide between two worlds? She's beautiful, Jack said softly. Thank you, Iana whispered. For everything, you risk much to help us. What will you name her? Iana smiled, and Jack saw in that expression a glimpse of the happiness that had been stolen from her by war and loss. Ithaca, she said, means wise. We hope she grows to be wiser than her parents, wiser than the people who cannot see past their hatred. Outside, Jack could hear the Apache warriors making preparations to depart. Their sanctuary was temporary at best, and they all knew it. But for now, in this moment, there was peace. And sometimes, Jack reflected, peace was enough. Where will you go? He asked. North, Iana replied. To Canada, where Apache people can live free, raise our children in safety. She looked at him with eyes that held both gratitude and sorrow. You could come with us, Jack Brennan. You have no family here, no ties to bind you. In the north, you could start over. Jack considered the offer, surprised by how tempting it sounded. But then, he looked around at the small house he'd built with his own hands, at the land he'd worked for 3 years to make productive. This was his home now, his chance at redemption for the mistakes of his past. Thank you, he said finally. But I think I belong here. Someone needs to tend this place, and maybe someday other people will need help the way you did, Iana. Nodded with understanding. You are a good man, Jack Brennan. Apache people will remember. As evening approached, the small band prepared to resume their journey north. Jack helped load supplies and watched as Lozon carefully examined both mother and child one final time. Baby Ithaca slept peacefully through the preparations. Seemingly unaware of the momentous day of her birth, Nolnish approached Jack as the others finished their preparations. We go now while darkness protects us, but before we leave, I give you this. He held out a small piece of turquoise carved in the shape of a bear. Bear spirit for protection. You earn right to wear it. Jack accepted the gift with reverence, understanding its significance. Thank you for trusting me, for letting me be part of this. You save life of sacred child, Nolnish replied. That makes you brother to all Apache people, if you ever need help show bear carving. Any Apache warrior will know you as friend. As the band melted away into the darkness, heading north toward an uncertain but free future, Jack stood alone in his dooryard. The storm had passed, leaving the air clean and cool. Stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled its ancient song. Jack Brennan, former cavalry soldier and current rancher, had found his own kind of peace. Not the peace of victory or defeat, but the peace that came from doing what was right regardless of the cost. He'd helped bring new life into the world. It played a small part in preventing unnecessary bloodshed, and had perhaps even contributed to the hope that someday wisdom might triumph over hatred. In his pocket, the turquoise bear carving felt warm against his fingers, a reminder that even in the harsh landscape of the frontier, honor still mattered. And sometimes, if a man was very lucky, honor was enough.